afternoon, Senator Brakey, members of the committee. I'm still Ed Noda with the American Lung Association, Senior VP for Public Policy, here to support this bill. And I'm going to talk about a different aspect of the bill. I think you've heard plenty of testimony on arsenic, and certainly that's a concern of ours as well from the lung cancer point of view. But I'd like to speak specifically about another benefit of this bill, which would be uncovering radon gas in people's homes. And some of you may know, I'm not going to read my testimony, but you may know that essentially radon gas can enter the home in two different ways, either through the ground or through the water. Some of the early work demonstrating that actually was done by the Maine Department of Health and Human Services and the University of Maine back in the 1950s here in Maine. Lung cancer from radon is the second leading, it's a leading cause of lung cancer after in non-smokers. So let me state that more specifically. It's the leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers. The estimates are up to 14% of the 160,000 people that die every year from lung cancer die because of radon exposure. And testing is the only way to find out what the levels are. The Department of Human Services here estimates that as many as 1 out of 3 homes may have elevated radon levels. And so this is another benefit of this bill by tracking these kinds of problems and incentivizing testing in those private wells. One good thing about radon exposure is that it can be mitigated at relatively low cost. So it's one of the things that we can actually do something about. In fact, the American Lung Association building over on State Street had elevated radon levels. We put in a mitigation system, and I'd love to have something as reliable as the fan that we use to exhaust that, because it's been running continuously for 16 years. I'm not sure of anything that works that well. We would actually just have a couple of suggestions on how to strengthen this bill, make a little bit some ideas for you in the work session. We think that requiring water testing be conducted and disclosed whenever property is transferred in the state would make sense. It happens quite frequently, but it's not a requirement. And also requiring periodic testing of private water supplies that serve rental properties, mitigation where necessary, and consequences for failure to comply with that. It's part of the habitability of that building. We feel strongly that that should not be just something that we are lax about. It's people are depending on having a residence that is free of cancer-causing radon. So we fully support this and happy to answer any questions.
All right. Seeing no questions, thank you very much. Additional testimony in support of this bill.
Good afternoon, Senator Brakey, Representative Guttine, members of the committee. Andy McLean with the Maine Medical Association. We also support the bill. I've submitted written testimony by Dr. Lonnie Graham on behalf of our Public Health Committee. You've heard plenty of great testimony about the public health threat of contaminated drinking water today. I do want to note that our Public Health Committee has had a long-standing interest in environmental toxins, and with respect to this particular bill, not only is the testimony in Dr. Graham's name, but Dr. Dora Mills participated in our discussion about this bill. So you have the strong support of 2 of the last 3 state public health officers in support of the bill. And lastly, I would just note that our office is off the Pelton Hill Road in Manchester, and we're a business, so we can do this. But we have had signs above every tap in our building since it was built in 1987 that says, "Please do not drink the water." We have bottled water in the building. So thank you. I too would be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Seeing none? Oh, Representative Burstein.
Sorry, I just have to ask, have you tested for radon in your offices?
I don't, that's a great question. I will follow up with that.
All right, thank you very much. Additional testimony in support of this bill. Welcome.
No. Good afternoon. My name is Emma Hallis O'Connor. I'm with the organization Prevent Harm. Thank you, Senator Brakey and Representative Gatine and others for the opportunity to testify in support of LD 1162. Prevent Harm is a public health organization. We're dedicated to protecting Maine families from exposure to toxic chemicals. LD 1162, in our minds, is really about getting rid of the barriers that exist right now that are keeping people from accessing safe drinking water. We know that about 150,000 rural Maine residents are drinking unsafe water right now. And so we want to help out in two ways here. One, LD 1162 would increase awareness by disseminating information to Maine residents and by making it a little more clear how you get a water test. So our goal should be universal testing of private wells. Right now, only about 45% of Maine residents test their wells. And the good news is that there are some strategies that are proven already to get more people to test their wells. Really simple things like getting stories in a local newspaper or getting centralized communications out to families with children. There is, as was mentioned before, a grant from the federal CDC that is funding some efforts in a couple of the hotspot communities in Maine, but that grant is finite, and we need to have a continuous stream of funding to support this badly needed outreach and education. So that's why the bill sets up this Safe Drinking Water Fund, paid for with a very modest fee of $5 on a water test. We also want to try to simplify the Maine Public Health website. I submitted with my testimony the first 3 pages of the guidelines for getting a water test. As you can see, it's very complicated. There are many different tests, very many different options. We think there should be one singular recommended test that recommends arsenic, uranium, radon, and the other common chemical contaminants in private well water. And finally, the bill establishes some reasonable roles for landlords, for well drillers, and for realtors to improve the rate of testing. And I'd be happy to answer more questions about how the bill does each of those things. And then finally, the other major barrier here is that a lot of people who find out that they have contaminated well water can't afford to treat it. So that's why the bill establishes this system of funding that would go to the Maine State Housing Authority, would provide assistance to low-income families who need to treat their water. We know that about 21% of Maine children live in poverty right now. It is very unlikely that these families are going to be able to install a treatment system in their house. And so that's why again, what we thought was a modest 3% surcharge on water treatment, which would probably be passed on to the consumer, would be able to go towards helping more Maine families be able to purchase these systems. So finally, I passed out with my testimony these maps that just show statewide the rates of unsafe drinking water wells across the state. As you can see, this is an enormous problem in the state of Maine. It's not going to go away on its own, and that's why we strongly urge support for LD 1162. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no questions, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Additional testimony in support of this bill.
Good afternoon, Senator Brakey, Representative Gatine, and esteemed members of the panel of the committee. My name is David Bloker. I'm a resident of Litchfield, Maine, and I'm here today to testify in support of LD 1162 and act to ensure safe drinking water for Maine families. I too am concerned about the threat of arsenic in drinking water in Maine due primarily to the lack of knowledge on residents as far as what the danger is. And it turns out that the vast majority of rural Mainers drink from drilled wells, which are very susceptible to contamination. My experience indicates that little has been done to educate the public or to facilitate remediation when it's required. My personal experience is in 1995, I drilled a private well at my residence in Oak Hill Road in Litchfield to replace what was then a failing spring. The well driller did the standard test for drinking water. I also